Hey there, beautiful people. I'm Tracy Rigdon.
And I'm Shelton Hall.
This is the Contrast Project. We got a wonderful show scheduled for today.
Yes, we do. I'm looking forward to it.
We've got a lot of great people coming on. We're going to be talking about a little bit of everything. We're going to talk about some art, some local history,
Yep.
the relevant app.
Yep.
Everything is going to be included in this show. So you're going to have to stick around just to see what it is. Now, one of the things, well, two of the things that's on everybody's mind now that just can't seem to go away is one, the election, and two, the pandemic.
Yes.
And we also have the local aspect of the government that's been an issue. So let's talk about the election coming up, or the election as it is coming to a close.
Yes.
The Electoral College is meeting
at this moment, as we record now. This is a Monday afternoon. The Electoral College is they are ensconced in their various state houses around the country right now, casting their votes for to certify this election. So in theory, it should be certified by the end of the day.
Should be certified by at least by the 11 o'clock news tonight.
Yes.
We'll at least have the results of that. And then, of course, we know that it goes to the full Congress on January the 6th.
Yes.
So there's still time for shenanigans.
Oh, yes.
So, and presiding over the Congress at that meeting is going to be Vice President Pence.
Oh.
So we still have things to either look forward to or to dread.
Yeah, yeah. Don't turn the metal detectors off yet.
Yeah, it's just something else, and this is kind of all of this going on right now with all the 45 has already lost 50 filed lawsuits that have been dismissed.
Yeah,
50 something, and even in the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court of Georgia.
Yeah. And
it just seems like it's a losing battle, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse as the days go on.
Well, sure. I mean, it's
just arguing the point.
Yeah. Well, that's his nature. This is the first major public defeat he's had. You know, this is the first time he's been in a situation where he really can't spin it, can't swing it, can't make a phone call and get out of this situation.
Yeah.
And he doesn't like being embarrassed, so it's got to be a very difficult time for him.
Yeah, he's got a super big ego.
I feel so bad for him.
I'm sure you do.
My heart just.
I am sure. Tiny violins.
Yeah.
And also all this mess that's going on is quite a distraction from the pandemic.
Yes.
Because we're having problems in not only nationwide, the numbers are growing, but Florida's just a powder keg.
Yes.
And we have a governor in Florida that's basically just
we have kind of a governor.
Kind of a governor.
Yeah.
And he's just keeps on basically just towing the line with Trumpism. He's an anti-masker. He doesn't want to have any mandates. It wants to open everything back up, and every time they do that, we see a spike in the numbers again.
Sure.
And of course, like Trump says, if we stop testing, we'll stop seeing more numbers, right?
Yeah.
But we keep having 10,000, 14,000 cases in Florida just on Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah.
I mean.
And and those numbers are always going to be low because whatever is being reported, there are others are not being reported. People who die, people with COVID, like say if someone comes in the hospital with COVID and then they catch pneumonia and die of the pneumonia, that doesn't count as a COVID death.
Right.
So the numbers are actually like a good bit higher. And you look back, going back to March when this whole pandemic started, it was going around the world, in the month, the first few weeks of this, no one was really had ahead of it, had a control of it, across the world.
Right.
But everyone else, they sort of started to get it slowed a bit. Even places like Australia and New Zealand get like little tiny bits of a second wave, but generally they were able to squash that.
They locked it down pretty hard early, though.
Yeah, and I think the main factor has been not just the intellectual weakness of our leadership class in this country, but their emotional weakness. And this is Democrats and Republicans alike. The way every governor has personalized this and used this as an opportunity to get themselves on TV You know, like Andrew Cuomo, he did a good job up in New York of handling, and New York had it worst of everybody, you know, when the thing first got started.
Absolutely.
You know, but then it's like, I mean, you know, take your nipple rings out before the press conference. We don't need to see that. That's nothing to do with public health.
No.
You know, and Trump from the top. I mean, we've talked about this before with this election. It was his election to lose. He lost it. Like if he had just handled this the way everyone else had around the world, everything would have been fine.
Right.
Had the deaths not gotten above 100,000, he would have still been reelected. You know, the Democrats would have not been able to all the different, you know, whether it's the kids in the cages or Syria or Iraq or Iran and all these things going on. The opposition would have never been able to build a critical mass to go up against them unless they had this pandemic to polarize the nation's, you know, to polarize the nation's consciousness, and particularly to shave off moderate Republicans, even some conservatives, who were just outraged by the, you know, the failure of this administration. You know, and it's not a matter of incompetence. It's a matter of knowing exactly what needs to be done, but not doing it because those methods are associated with. Yeah.
And if Trump had started early on, encouraging his base.
Yeah.
To follow these protocols and social distancing and masks and everything, but he never did that. He never encouraged them. So there was a created divide. And his base, they're like belligerent about it.
Yeah.
A great vast majority of them are. I mean, they're really in your face about not wearing a mask.
Yeah.
About, you know, getting back our lives.
Because it's not about the mask. Like the people refusing to wear a mask, the reason they refuse to wear a mask is simply because they know that other people would like them to wear a mask.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, hey, it's like you see somebody carrying groceries with their shoe untied. You're like, hey, wait, put your groceries down, tie your shoe. You're gonna trip and fall. They're like, you're not the boss of me. I'm like, okay, you go ahead and do that.
Well, that's exactly how they act. That is exactly how they act. And 45 has created that divide.
Yeah.
By constantly, his rallies are only centric to his base.
Yeah.
He tells the people at the rallies, well, those damn Democrats, those damn liberals, you know, lock them up, this and that, calling them bad names. He doesn't go on. He doesn't give a press conference on TV that is adequate enough to address both sides of the aisle. He only wants to talk to his base and rile them up.
From day one, he never had any intention of being bipartisan. Even most other presidents, you know, even conservatives, like, will make an effort to reach across the aisle, at least a little bit. You know, for some, like in this pandemic, any other president would have been on television, like why wasn't Trump on Sesame Street showing kids how to wash their hands? You know, why wasn't Trump on TV saying, "Oh, the COVID test is easy and simple. I'm going to get a COVID test right here on TV to show you how easy it is."
Right.
You know.
Yeah. He never made an attempt.
Why weren't they selling MAGA masks? Red face masks with the MAGA logo on it. They would have sold tons of those. Yeah. You know.
Yep.
I'd have bought one, but I wouldn't have worn it.
Hang it on the door.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, we have a wonderful show coming up.
We do. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens.
We've got lots of people coming up. So stick around. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. I have with me here today the lovely Miss Tammy McKinley.
Hello.
Local photographer, artist, businesswoman, proprietor of her own gallery.
Yes.
So, like so much of everyone else, we're all talking about the pandemic and have been since March. And we know that it's affected the service industries, and some small restaurants weren't able to bounce back, and they're having a hard time. Even the ones that did reopen, a lot of them are at 50% capacity, which is barely enough to pay their bills. And I've spoken with a couple of other artists in the area, and they have said that the pandemic has struck them pretty hard too.
Yeah.
So tell us how that's affected you and your art and, you know, photography and the gallery.
Well, the pandemic has been just a nightmare for us. Normally we would have at the Union Art Studios and Gallery, we would have 2 or 3 shows a year. One of them being a big Halloween show or big Halloween party that we have. And this year we couldn't do anything. Absolutely, I could not open to the public. I had to deny entry to the public into our studio, and we've been like that since mid-February.
Wow.
Yeah, because it just didn't want to take any chances of anyone getting sick. And while our studio is big enough to socially distance, we have absolutely no ventilation. So anything that's in there is going to be stuck in there. Everybody's inhaling it. So yeah, so we haven't been able to do anything for the outside public. Now, me and the other artists have still been able to go up there and work, but because of the pandemic, we can't bring in models and do workshops or do other stuff like that. We're pretty much working solo.
Right.
Which makes it really difficult. You know.
Sure. And it's already a difficult art market. Jacksonville, Duval County. It's already a tough market.
Yeah, yeah. For some reason, Jacksonville has world-class artists.
Sure.
Absolutely, some of the best artists in the entire world. Unfortunately, we don't have a big sales market for art here in Jacksonville. So, there's incredible artists, but we have to go outside of Jacksonville to sell our work.
Right.
Or go online or do other stuff. Well, with the pandemic, nobody's having gallery shows. So it doesn't do any good to even go outside of Jacksonville because it's everywhere.
Right.
We can't show our stuff anywhere. So it's made it really, really difficult for all of us. But the upside is it's given us a lot more time to be more creative in our thought processes and how this is affecting us, because everything is pretty much locked down.
Right.
You know, we're just pretty much arting for ourselves, and so that gives us a lot more freedom to really delve into some topics and emotions and feelings and techniques. Try stuff, new stuff that we've been wanting. Yeah, that we've been wanting to try. So.
Well, that is an upside.
It is an upside.
On the other side of the pandemic, when it finally does go away, then, some of you will probably have a nice little stockpile of stuff that you've done during the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And, some people, the pandemic is it's been so hard just to deal with emotionally. The creative process has slowed down for them. And for other people, it has gone the exact opposite direction, where they've, embraced the solitude and have really learned to express themselves more fully.
Right. Yeah, I've talked to many people that are honestly enjoying the lockdown to a certain degree.
Right.
To a certain degree.
Right.
I mean, there's still, people are having a hard time going to the store, going to Home Depot or whatever, and the distancing and for God's sakes, if you go to Walmart, it's a nightmare.
Oh yeah.
Everyone I've been in. I mean, like every other person has got a mask on, if that much.
Right.
And especially out in the Middleburg area.
Right.
Those people out there, they just deny the whole thing is even happening. They think it's all a hoax.
Yeah, I still talk to people who think it's a hoax.
It's nothing
it's
but
no
a flu.
worse than flu. Yeah, and I'm like, really? Because 300,000 people a year do not die of the flu. I'm sorry, but they don't.
They only had like 38,000 last year.
Yeah.
In the United States.
And there's a nice big variety over the course of 5 years. You're looking at anywhere from 20 to 50, 60,000 people a year per flu. So depending on the flu and the season itself. So it averages out to closer to 30 to 40,000 people per year.
Right.
Well, this pandemic has killed over 300,000 people.
Right.
So there's a bit of a difference.
Quite a bit of difference. Well, the deniers, you hear it all the time. Well, they had comorbidities. Pneumonia killed them, or heart disease killed them, or whatever. But
you wouldn't have died from it otherwise.
That's right. The COVID is what got them in the hospital in the first place.
Right. Exactly.
So really, that's the cause of death.
Right.
That is
Exactly.
the cause of death.
You can have you can live a nice, long, full life with diabetes,
Sure.
with medication and treatment,
Absolutely, and heart disease.
and heart disease.
Yeah.
But if you get COVID with it, boom,
Yeah.
you're intubated.
And the ones that a lot of the patients that have actually survived it, they're having long-term effects.
Yes.
Lung scarring, liver scarring.
Yep.
So it goes far beyond anything that the flu has ever done.
Yeah, the long haulers syndrome is what a lot of people are getting, and they're saying now that there's a lot of neurological symptoms, brain fog and all that stuff. So and this is not something you want to mess around with.
Yeah.
It's not something you want to play with.
And they're trying to push. They're trying to push two different companies, really untested, unproven vaccines. I'm kind of worried about that myself. Although the first line people are getting it in Jacksonville as we speak at University Hospital over Shands. They're giving it to nursing home patients and they're giving it to frontline workers.
Right.
And if I remember correctly, when I worked in the hospital, a lot of time when they had those like flu vaccines and stuff like that, it was mandatory for us to take it. And if we didn't take it, then we had to wear a mask, and there were certain criteria, certain patients that we couldn't take care of.
Right.
If you don't take the flu vaccine, you can't go in this room.
Right. Right.
Well,
you don't want to risk transmitting it to somebody who's extra vulnerable.
Oh, absolutely.
You may be fine. You may be absolutely fine. You may get it and have the sniffles and nothing more and walk away.
Right.
You give it to somebody else.
Yeah.
It's deadly for them.
Absolutely.
So,
and our current administration had done a piss poor job.
The absolute worst.
And not just in Washington, but the state of Florida too. DeSantis
absolutely.
is invisible.
Absolutely.
No mask mandates.
Right.
And I realize we're on camera now with no masks, but we do wear masks when we go out.
I wear masks everywhere I go.
I carry the bandanas and the masks. If I'm just going into the Jiffy store real quick, I got that little paper thing.
I've got
but
a collection
I have to wear
of
those
masks.
bandanas because I got this thing.
I've got a collection of masks. So I have about 10 masks now, all different types. Some of them were made by artists. I bought a lot of them off of Etsy. Some of them have got rhinestones or fringe or, embroidered. It's like a whole new fashion assortment for me. You did fall. So yeah, it's just like it's like wearing a different pair of shoes every day. So
yeah.
So you have to embrace it and have fun with it, right? I mean, you can just have a regular mask, or you can have a fancy mask, or
Yeah.
So
I do have them.
So I decided to go with the fancy masks and have fun with it. Just have
why
fun
not?
with it.
Why not?
If it's going to make people smile, what's the harm?
Yeah, what's the harm? What's the harm in it? Now, talking about the administration and the Grand Cheetolini, Donald Trump, he had, and we're segueing into your art, he had said some things, on tape.
Yes, he did.
And, one of them was, grab him by the pussy.
Yep, he did.
And you have come up with a nice art piece.
Yeah.
It's a rather large piece, too. Is it still in the gallery?
Yeah, it's 24 by 36.
Yeah.
On aluminum.
Yep. And you call it what?
Grabbing America by the Pussy.
And you had started several months ago producing T-shirts and stickers. And the stickers are winding up all over the public places all over the country now.
Yep.
So was that a limited run thing, or are you still producing them? Or?
I'm not still producing them, although I do still have some left over. I did what is called Operation Grabbing America, and sent them out to all 50 states, primarily to DNC offices, but also to friends and family that I have that live all over the country.
Right.
So they've ended up in New York, LA, Miami, Chicago, Savannah, Atlanta, Birmingham, Myrtle Beach. I mean, just all
Everywhere.
over just everywhere.
I've seen some of the pictures. People have taken pictures of them after they stuck it to the wall somewhere.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So let's see the shirt real quick.
You
Can you guys see that? Sure you can.
see that? So it's body painted in the American flag with a hand coming up in the crotch and grabbing it. And thank you, Susie West and Jeff, for modeling for me.
That was spot on.
It was.
And it has a deep meaning too,
It
other
did.
than just being colorful and
Right. Right. In fact, it was. I shot it in January 2017, just not long after the inauguration, and it just came to me, and I was like, that sounds like a pretty good image. Maybe I'll try that. But it seemed so simple and so obvious to me that I Googled it beforehand to see if anybody else had already shot it, because it just seemed like obvious to me. It's like an obvious shot, right? And I Googled it, and nobody else had shot it. I was like, oh my goodness.
There you go.
And I called up Susie and Jeff, and they're a couple. They're both artists. Susie's a great model, an excellent model. And they agreed to do it with me. Jeff helped me with the painting. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, and anyway, I think we had it in like 3 shots. I mean, it was just right off. I mean, had it right away.
Well, it looks great. It turned out great. It makes a statement.
Thank you. Thank you.
It does.
Something some people don't realize is the hand is painted in Russian flag. So that's actually the Russian flag that the hand is painted in. So it kind of works on multiple levels.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm glad you were able to make enough time to come out and see us today. Thank you so much for coming out.
Well, thank you for having me.
And people can, if you still have stickers and stuff like that available, they can get through to us, and we can let you know.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm happy to help.
Coming up in the next segment, kids, Shelton's going to be sitting down with local writer Stephen Dare, so stick around.
Hey everybody, welcome back. We are joined right now by Mr. Stephen Dare, local legend, icon of sorts in this community. Across the board, how are you doing today?
Oh, fine as frog here.
Good. Thanks for coming out. I'd like to start just by talking a little bit about what you're doing right now, your current ventures, current projects.
Well, I'm doing a couple of things. As you may or may not know, when Lee Harvey died in 2014, there was a trust formed to handle his prodigious body of work.
Yes.
And so it's 33,000 pieces. And so for the past 6 years, we've been cataloging and recording that entire body of work. We're closing that up right now. So coming to the end of that particular part of conserving his artwork. And then I'm working on my next media venture, which will be a joint, kind of like a web, but also a virtual reality news kind of agency.
And you mentioned Lee Harvey there, good friend of mine too. Something you talk about a lot online is how prescient and sort of almost clairvoyant Lee was with some of his imagery and symbolism in the work he did, especially towards the end of his life, relative to what's happening right now in society. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, in fact, I'll tell you a zombie story if you like.
Good.
All right.
It's not Zombie Lee. We don't need that.
Although he'd be preferable to the current mayor.
True.
But the Lee Harvey had this really weird thing happen towards the end of his life, and that he got mesothelioma, which is not in itself weird, but what happened next was. So he was given about 6 weeks to live, and we had angry phone calls from hospice wondering why he wasn't checking in.
Yeah.
And we got him instead involved in an experimental program out of Bethesda at the National Cancer Institute, which was using an immunological approach to solving cancer. So basically what they did with him was they infected him with a modified HIV virus that went into his white blood cells and changed them into something that sought out the mesothelin protein, which is what causes mesothelioma, and then kills it, right? So his blood supply, all of his white blood cells became attuned to killing this particular protein in this virus. So he lived for another 7 years instead of the 6 weeks that he was given. And it caused him to radically revise how he was approaching the world. And he became very interested in politics and megatrends in politics. So in 2005, Lee did his first Trump 2020 poster. And he did a series of giant paintings all dealing with the year 2020. And probably the most alarming is he called them bunnymen, but all the way through these landscapes, and there are hundreds of these paintings, there are people in blue PPP outfits and white masks across their face with the numbers 2020 across the bottom of them. So it's almost like when he went through this treatment, he changed spiritually, certainly. Mm-hmm. But, he changed on a very fundamental physical level, in as much as he had a type of blood that has never existed in the history of humanity. And part of the price of doing this experimental program was that they then copywrote his new genome. Mm. So, and that genome and the way that they use his blood cells is, I think, the process that they're using now in order to treat mesothelioma from that immunological process. He ended up dying not from mesothelioma, but from complications surrounding the treatment. Mm-hmm. But before he died, he left behind this very prescient, funny, savage documentation of what then happened over the next 6 years before, he died in 2014. Trump had not even announced that he was running.
That's right.
So he didn't announce until 2015. So this past 4 years particularly has been pretty interesting in cataloging that collection.
Where can people see some of that stuff or acquire pieces if they want to?
Lee left behind an incredibly fussy kind of blueprint about how we can share his work. So there are limits on how many we can sell. We can sell prints. They can come to his Facebook page and make inquiries. And then on his Facebook page, we have like a few hundred examples. But over the next 2 years, we move into the second part of what the Trust does, and that is preparing it for exhibition and for books.
Excellent. Excellent. Now, how long have you lived here in Jacksonville? And what first brought you here?
Well, Dr. Guyland brought me here. So I was born here in St. Vincent's in the early 60s.
Wow.
So I've been here since then.
Yeah, I know you spent some time in Indiana. How long were you over there, and what took you over there?
It was kind of weird. I left Jacksonville. I was kind of interested. I was actually looking at, in the 90s, with the urban centers kind of contracting because computerization was making so much of the real estate just pointless. Yeah. You went from needing 25 floors to run a corporate headquarters down to 5 floors within 3 years. And so the downtown taxable footage had decreased to the point that these budgets, which allowed for taxpayers to reap the benefit of huge financially profitable spaces, and it's being spent on their education and their infrastructure. In the 90s, all of that dried up. So I started traveling, looking at what other cities were doing to make up for that loss of income in the urban cores and how they were going to fund suburban sprawl, which was not considered a problem at the time. Yeah. So I traveled. I lived in San Francisco, Seattle, Chicago, did a little bit of travel in Europe, all the way through South America. And then I ended up on the way back to Jacksonville, stopping in this tiny little town called Muncie, Indiana. And I got wholly sucked into the drama of this little place. Fell in love, raised a family, did a law firm for a little while. And then I'd had every conversation that it was possible to have in Indiana. And I was working on the second time of having those conversations around when I realized I needed to move back to Florida. So that's what I did.
Cool. It's a very kind of a transient community in this city, like a lot of people that haven't been there that long. Question that people ask me a lot is, especially with the politics and aspects of urban development, the urban core, why is Jacksonville like this? Like there's a weirdness about this city. Like, how would you describe it? Like, what's the deal? Like, why are things the way they are? Well, let's narrow it down. Why was downtown busier in 1920 than it is in 2020?
Well, not just 1920. I mean, like, Jacksonville is this very amazing place. And downtown was this incredibly progressive town. It was called the Progressive City in America. This is where the Progressive Party had its most solid representation of its ideas.
Really?
Teddy Roosevelt was closely allied to the city. John T. Alsop was married to one of his relatives, who was one of the Rough Riders. Jacksonville has city mothers rather than city fathers.
Yeah.
And it's one of the first planned communities. And it was the playground of, the wealthy. So Jacksonville, around the turn of the century, had 64 beautiful grand bordellos. And so our main industry, this is where the railroad for freight connected with steamships for freight, and the passenger railroads connected with the passenger steam. And this energy of unloading, warehousing, stocking, reloading, it created this downtown that was absolutely explosive in growth. And where you have 50,000 railroad guys who are transient laborers, there's a real need for whorehouses.
Sure.
And so Jacksonville's original economy is based on hotels, whorehouses, bordellos, houses of assignment, and infrastructure that is around logistics. And so Jacksonville continues to be this really kind of giant force in the downtown until about the 60s. And the last legal whorehouse in downtown Jacksonville was 1953. It was Spanish Maria's. And then they started opening up the lands on the south side where, people could get very cheap land and pay no income tax, pay no property taxes on it, but still use the urban core of Jacksonville. And that's what happened. So as the suburbs started sprawling, the downtown started contracting. And unfortunately, we were early on in the urban renewal movement in the South. So we handed over the responsibility and the direction of the downtown to a handful of bourbon swizzling kind of white guys in suits who would go to the top of the tallest buildings, swizzle some bourbon and go, "Imagine a store." And then that would be our public policy.
Yeah.
And the downtown development authorities, most of whom I've known over the course of my life, they just had very low aspirations, but they managed to strangle all growth and development. But I think if you had to say why downtown is the way it is, it would be the rise of the pork chop gang. So, do you know the pork chop gang?
I've heard the term, but I'm not familiar.
So, Ed Ball, right? The Jesse DuPont Ball. So he formed something called the Pork Chop Gang.
The Florida East Coast Railway, right?
Yeah, well, yes, he had the Florida East Coast. What he did was, his brother-in-law was Alfred DuPont. And he was a bit of a shyster, and he ran most of the investments for DuPont. And then DuPont died under very mysterious circumstances. And Ball is able to control the money, but he's never allowed to own the money, right?
Yeah.
So he can have power but not wealth, but all of the trappings of wealth, and he chose power. So he declared a shooting war on his own union because he didn't want to pay workingmen. So they're dynamiting the tracks along the Florida East Coast. They're he's shooting at the labor union guys. He decides that all of these women with their ideas about what makes a nice downtown have got to go. And he definitely feels like the blacks have had a good run, but now it's time for them to run elsewhere. So from 35 until 67, he asserts this racist, anti-woman, anti-liberal kind of sensibility, and he was the titan of this town. And he was the original pork chop gang, is the good old boys that the consolidators finally had to get rid of.
And consolidation happened in 60s was a tumultuous time. We had schools lost their accreditation, a bunch of public officials were indicted for different corruption issues.
As well they should have been. Like, those people were all close to Hayden Burns, and like, yeah, all of those people, they were corrupt as fuck, and they deserved the indictments that they got. In order to get rid of Hayden Burns, they had to like kick his ass upstairs to the governorship because there was no other way to get him out of downtown. Yeah. You know, he ran on making the buses work on time. Oh. Yeah, his single thing that he ran on was public transportation. And then that conveyed into a whole bunch of corruption. Mm-hmm. But, you know, the 60s themselves, like, the city is changing dramatically. And again, you've got this ongoing, like, suburbanization process. You've got more and more expenses. And all of these people, none of them are paying taxes back to municipal Jacksonville. Right. So consolidation is a way to take all of this white flight, and instead of giving them a free ride the way they got in Detroit, forcing them to pay for the downtown and the central city. Yeah. Unfortunately, they then handed that over to a decision-making body that really shouldn't have been trusted with anything like more serious than orthodontic, like, bridge work. Yeah.
Did you know a guy named Marvin Edwards who used to work at the Folio?
I did. I always thought he was a crank. God bless his soul.
Yeah, he's a curmudgeon. He was one of those special types.
And he made his entire career running against public transportation.
That's odd. I would have thought, I'd have figured he'd be take the exact opposite approach.
It was the Skyway. He did not want centralized transportation in the city. So if you think about all of those things he did against the Skyway, that's about transportation. It's about the idea of, you know, tying the various historic neighborhoods back into a core-based transportation system. He did everything in his power, and he got it defunded.
What's the argument to be made against a centralized public transportation?
Well, the same idiotic argument that Republicans use now. Well, it's just going nowhere. Well, no shit, buddy. We just built the first 1/90th of the system. Yes. So, you know, they decided to build it in phases, and then each phase was nowhere near good enough. The original system, you know, it was designed because the hospitals got together, and they wanted to be able to connect their services. So where Shands, that was University Hospital, and then Baptist, and then St. Vincent's, they all wanted to be able to have a centralized place so that you could get back and forth. Because the old city center, when I was a kid, there were 82,000 people downtown every day. Yeah. And, you know, it was those giant cars from the 70s where they're 16 feet wide. Yeah. And you're walking through the urban landscape, and you've got, like, all this dust on your face. Yeah. Yeah, it was impossible to get back and forth. So they proposed that system. And then it just ran aground of people who just permanently hate everything, of whom Marvin Edwards was one.
Oh, we're wrapping up this segment. We're going to do more stuff as the millennia proceed along. But I want to ask a quick two-part question to wrap up here. Number one, who's your favorite mayor ever? Three-part question. Number one, who's your favorite mayor ever? Number two, who's your favorite public official that should have been mayor but never did become mayor? And number three, who do you think the next mayor of Jacksonville will be in 2023?
2 and 3 are the same person. So my favorite mayor ever, and this is probably surprising, but I love Jake Godbold. Jake Godbold was the one who funded the arts in this city. Yeah. And it was a meeting in which he literally told our city council people, I don't understand this art shit, but I know if we want business, we've got to have it. So it's time to throw money, boys. Yeah. And so he got the first $1 million funding for arts as a result of that.
That quote should be up on something.
It should be on a building. It should be on the annex for the Jake Godbold annex. Second one is, who should have been mayor? Matt Carlucci.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
Carlucci would have been such a distinct improvement over John Payton. And I like John, but Carlucci would have been better. And then I think Matt is probably going to take this next mayor's round. So he's positioned, he has moved himself into the future. He's with sustainability, he's with resiliency. He's figured out how to be a 70-year-old guy and still live in 2020 and 2030.
He's adapted well. He's managed to stay very relevant in these times.
And he was considered a conservative jerk once upon a time.
Yeah.
I was there. I called him that.
Yeah, he was like slightly to the left of Clay Yarborough, practically.
Oh, yeah, except way smarter.
Yeah.
But that's not a high bar.
One more question. How's Lord M?
He's dead.
He's dead?
He died.
When?
Last year.
Oh. Well, on that note, we'll be right back. Yeah.
So if I with the relevant app, I can, inside of my vibe, I can say, yo, I got a show today. Or come to this address and you can see this show. And when you get to that address, I put my messaging within a mile radius, and when you get in it, you hear the other message that my show is actually in this warehouse over here. There's no walker bys, walker ups.
Yeah.
They have access to you and what you're doing. I think that's the dopest thing about this relevant app based on the local thing.
Hey everybody, we're back. Joined right now by Miss Trina Dockery. She is working with us on the Relevant app and the Uplift, which you've heard so much about before and you will hear so much more about again. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me a bit about the history of the Relevant app, how you got involved in it. And
Okay, well, I met Winder, the founder, in 2014. Our daughters actually played volleyball together. And he was telling me about this project that he was working on, and I was giving him, and tips and whatnot, and what I thought would work and what might not when he was showing it to me. And he said, come on into the office and let's talk about some things. And shortly after that, he asked me to join the team.
how would you describe the Relevant app?
Relevant is an audio-based chat app that's also geolocation-based, that really has the capability of revolutionizing the way that podcasters and radio stations communicate with their audiences during their shows. Mm-hmm. And that is, one of the many things that it can do, but that's probably the main feature.
And there's so much, social media stuff out there, so many apps, so many things going on out there. What is it about Relevant and the functionality of the app that sets it apart from some of the competition, shall we say?
Well, I think that probably the fact that in the vibe streaming, the live audio piece, you can have people in multiple locations at the same time communicating without having to be in the same room together. Like you and I could be doing this interview and we wouldn't be right here. Yeah. I could be at home, you could be at home, and it could be streaming live.
It's almost like one of those old party lines.
Exactly. Exactly. And also, you've got a global functionality to it and a local functionality to it. So it travels with you. If you go to different cities and whatnot, everything that is based in that area will show up. But then the global feature is more your national brands and whatnot. So they are not location based and show up no matter where you are.
Yeah, I've been working with you guys for a couple of years. We've started this Uplift project over the last few months. Just how much fun is it working with me?
I absolutely love it. You're my all-time favorite.
Thank you. Glad you appreciate it. I do my best. Let's see. What are our plans? Your plans, our plans for the app moving forward into 2021. Where do we want to take it?
Well, interestingly, new features. It's hard to plan for the future and what's going to happen with it. It'll always be something that happens that, it's an aha moment. Mm-hmm. We need to add this. I mean, you've witnessed that.
Yes.
Up to this point. It's like 3 months ago, the actual Vibe Stream feature wasn't even in the app. So I've watched it change from just being something that was very much like the rest of social media to evolving to where it is today. So you really can't say, here's what I see happening in 6 months or a year.
Yeah.
It's going to take us where it wants to go.
Yeah, and one thing that's cool about it is how I think that because it's a new app and whatnot, the individual user can really put their own stamp and their own personality.
For sure. And what's really cool about it is where most podcasts and whatnot start in a studio like this. With the Vibe streaming feature, literally anybody could start their own podcast.
And for people who might want to download the app and get involved with it, how do they do that?
We are on the apps or in the App Store at relevant.com, and that's or relevant. You're gonna have to edit that part out. Relevant, the Relevant app, and there's you go into the App Store and you pull up Relevant, and a bunch of stuff's gonna pull up, but it's Relevant without the A, and it's Relevant Find Your Vibe. Same in the Google Play Store. It's a little harder to find in Google Play.
Absolutely. And once you join up with the Relevant app, you can follow us at The Uplift. You can follow us here at the Contrast Project. We do Vibe streaming on days when we're doing our recordings and whatnot. And thanks for joining in. Thanks for your help in advance. Thank you for your help as well.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here.
All right, and we will be right back with more good times.
Welcome back, kids. Thank you for joining us today. Shelton, as always, a pleasure.
Absolutely.
And we can remind our fans out here to pick up the Uplift magazine.
Pick it up, never put it down.
Never put it down. And also download the Relevant app.
That's right.
Because you'll find all kinds of good stuff on there. We're going to start doing the live podcast on the Relevant app. We have a Contrast Vibe in there.
That's right.
So I want everybody to do that. And Facebook, Instagram, like, share, comment.
Yep.
And on our YouTube channel, like, share, comment. And don't forget to
smash the subscribe button.
Smash that subscribe button.
Hey, yo, Mal, what's up?
Just trying to put you up on Relevant, yo. It's a new community chat app. I partnered with them to develop the Uplift, bro. We're off that other book, bro. We're doing the Victor Green style now, yo. Download ASAP.
Okay, cool. I'll download it now. Yo. All right.
Yo.
So I downloaded Relevant. What is the Uplift?
It's a new chat platform for the black community, exclusively on Relevant.
So what if I wanted to get my grub on with the black-owned restaurant?
Absolutely. In the category called Eat Up, you can find all the black-owned restaurants and grubbing in there.
So what if I wanted to go higher with my education at a historically black college?
Of course, you can find it inside of the Wise Up category. You can also politic with other black professionals on Power Up, a location-based community to do business and collaborate ideas. We got Speak Up for black community activists, Rise Up for career seekers, and Coming Up for talented rising black stars, all in one place. And the content changes based on the location of your city. Yo, it's going to be the next big thing. Find your vibe, exclusively on Relevant.
Listen, everybody, thanks for joining us. Until next time, peace.
Peace.